On May 19th, 2019, we flew Air Canada to Vancouver and embarked on a 10-day tour of Alaska, 7 of which would be on Holland America's MS Westerdam. So as usual, we departed from a dawn Harbour Island in San Diego, and soon were on a bus in Vancouver heading to the ship. A quick check of the accommodations proved them to be very satisfactory. Then, a quick lunch, a quick emergency drill, and by 4:30 we were out of Vancouver and heading to sea. While we were waiting to depart, one thing that impressed us was the level of seaplane activity in Vancouver, something that continued to impress for the entire trip. But we were on our way, covering the inland passage during the next 48 hours. A quick overview of where we were going can be seen here. The first 7 days would be on the ship, and the next 3 would be travelling by bus until we ultimately departed from Fairbanks. The next few days provided opportunities both for Alaskan scenery and familiarization with the ship. But before you could know it, we were in Ketchikan, Alaska's 5th most populous urban centre at 13,000 people. The location is so rugged that virtually all the houses are located within a couple of blocks of the ocean. In Ketchikan, we chose to join Misty Fjords for a water tour, and on their speedy vessel, they covered 100 miles, including some unusual trailer parks.
That's my kind of trailer park. I don't know about you guys.
And yes, we did see pregnant bald eagles and the occasional whale, not to speak of some striking volcanic countryside. But soon we were back with the planes in Ketchikan and up to no good in the shop. But it was time to push on the 288 miles to Juneau, capital of Alaska. Despite its modest population of 31,000, Juneau is the second largest city in the US by area, being larger in area than the state of Rhode Island. It's also interesting in that, because of the rugged terrain in which it is located, it is not connected by road to either the rest of Alaska or the United States, so all goods must come in either by air or sea. So again, we opted for a sea tour on a delightful cruiser with very well-informed guides. And certainly the whales performed, as did the cuisine on the boat.
Yep.
Oh no, that's Sasha.
Oh, here's a dive. Wow. Nice, clean.
Occasionally, a whale would lead us to an exceptional view of a glacier. But all too soon, it was time to head back to Juneau and explore the cable car to Mount Juneau. Mount Juneau is 3,576 feet, more or less straight up, and it receives 300% more rain than Juneau itself, meaning that the mountain gets 270 inches of rain a year. As a result, it is one of the principal avalanche threats to an urban centre in the world. But now it was time to discover one of the best things of the entire trip, the Red Dog Saloon, Juneau, Alaska.
When I get to Kansas City, Mama, I'll rock your ass insane. I'm going to Kansas City. Kansas City, here I come. We didn't do that on a ship, though. There's some crazy little women there, and I'm gonna get me one. Yeah, buddy, some more money, baby.
But regrettably, eventually we had to leave the Red Dog and drag ourselves the mere 101 miles to Skagway. Today, Skagway is a town of 1,100 people, whose livelihood is mostly tourism. Our plan was to ride the Yukon Narrow Gauge Railway to the summit at White Pass, a part of the 107-mile route to Whitehorse, the capital of the Yukon. The railway was an important development during the 1896 Klondike Gold Rush, when as many as 100,000 prospectors sought ways to get to the gold mines through inhospitable terrain. The prospectors were required by the Canadian government to bring a year's supply of food to avoid starvation, which meant that the miners had to take multiple trips to get up to a ton of goods to the mine field. Of course, the population of Skagway exploded to 30,000 during the 5 years or so when the rush was really on, and it was a very lawless city during the peak, with shootouts of some of the notorious criminals. Indeed, a visit to the town cemetery is a tourist favourite today because of the tales it reveals of Wild West times. It took 37,000 workers to complete the rail construction, but the railway ended the need for prospectors to lug their stuff up trails like this. But we were off again, this time the 173 miles to Glacier Bay. Glacier Bay is a national park consisting of over 5,000 square miles, of which over 80% is designated a wilderness area. The park has over 1,000 glaciers, and we travelled to the limit of the bay to observe Marjorie Glacier. So we spent several hours observing Marjorie Glacier discharging chunks into the bay, accompanied by explosive sounds as the glacier made sea contact. Eventually the ship was swung around and we were off again, though treated to some spectacular views as we left. This, the final sea leg, consisted of a day at sea covering 523 miles as we headed to seaward the port city of Anchorage. And we should at least reference some of the onboard entertainment, as well as the towel arrangements inevitably in our cabin each evening. Incidentally, while we were saying goodbye to the crew on the final night, the ship was accompanied by a pod of orcas. Our final days were spent driving the 483 miles to Fairbanks, with overnights at Denali and at Fairbanks. Unfortunately, that time did not provide for any in-depth look at the national park. What we did see were mile after mile of snow-peaked, rugged country. We did pass through Anchorage, which at 400,000 people, or over half the state's population, didn't appear that attractive. At Wasilla, we visited the headquarters of the Iditarod Trail Race, the 1,049-mile Husky race from Seward to Nome, Alaska. The race is intended to celebrate the role dogs played in the development of Alaska, but in addition it also celebrates the feat in 1925 when 20 drivers and their teams brought life-saving serum to the town of Nome in 127 hours following an outbreak of diphtheria. Another notable stop was the gallery at Nenana, a town of 300 people in the middle of nowhere, where we were treated to lemonade by the young proprietors of the lemonade stand. But all too soon we were crossing our last bridge and into Fairbanks. Our overnight locations were excellent, and in Fairbanks we found a particularly fun restaurant for our final meal, fully in keeping with the wildness that seemed to characterize Alaska. A big, wild country.